Hi, everyone. My name is Don Saucier. This is the TLC Professional Development Series. We meet every Wednesday at noon over Zoom. If you found us this time, you probably know the Zoom link. If not, you can reach out. We'll get it. We also send that out by request. We also archive all of the events so you can watch later. So if something cool happens here, you can tell your friends. It'll be on our website either later today or tomorrow for your viewing. Today, we're going to have a teaching chat, which means we're kind of just talk about what people want to talk about. And I have some questions that I want to ask the group, things that I'm thinking about, things that I'm dealing with. Also, a couple of announcements next week. Our event is going to be led by Colby Moorberg and Brian Lynchfield. The title of their presentation is going to be Rome Wasn't Built in a Day. Our open educational resources and pedagogy wasn't either. It'll be part of the Open Education Resource Week, and I'll be telling you about some really cool things that you can do, keeping in mind to make it both engaging and free for your students, which is really kind of important. Another announcement we're kind of excited about is May 9th. That is the Monday afternoon of finals week. We hope to offer our first annual TLC SOTO Showcase. If you've been to our events already, you know SOTO stands for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And what will happen is we'll be having a little mini conference. We'll have some talks, some posters, things like that. And we hope you'll have the opportunity to submit and present some of your work. Those submissions, we'll give you more details on how that will happen, but those submissions will be in form of abstracts that you'll submit to a Qualtrics survey by the end of the day on Monday, April 11th. So we're still a little bit away. We're still putting things together. We don't have that Qualtrics link ready just yet, but it's coming soon. So if you want to share what you're doing as relates to understanding how teaching and learning happen, if you just want to come and hear what other people are doing, that first annual TLC SOTO Showcase will be Monday afternoon on May 9th. And I imagine a lot of that event will be archived for later viewing if we can. So that will be fun. But that stuff coming up today. We've got a teaching chat. And basically what we're doing is, like I said, we're talking about anything y'all want to talk about. I have some real interesting questions that I have. Noah and I kind of predicted the first question that people might have today. So I'll just kind of throw it out there. What's on your mind?
Masks.
There we go. No, we got it. The top survey answer on Family Feud, the masks. So today is the first day at K-State where the mask mandate has been lifted. And this is consistent with CDC guidelines that basically say masks are optional in public places if you're in not a high-risk area. As of today, I think we're a medium risk area. So that means that masks are optional. They are encouraged, but they are optional. So some of us, for the first time, myself, first time in really 2 years, where I walked into a class and students weren't masked up. So what did we do? How did we feel? What are we going to do? How are we going to relay this to our students? What do y'all think?
I can go first. So it's funny, we had a faculty affairs committee meeting last night, and we were talking about this. And I'm sitting at home right now because my 7-year-old daughter, whose elementary school stopped wearing masks a week ago, has had a fever for the last 2 days. So yay.
So sorry to hear that, Brandon.
Yeah, it's not COVID, but it's just indicative of that masks do work. And it's so what I told my class this morning, it was by Zoom, but I said, hey, today's the first day without masks, and I know that the majority of people think this is a great thing. Can all of you just make sure you're being empathetic about those who may not feel this is a great deal, particularly, for your population of students, most of you, it is not a big deal, but if you can be empathetic for your instructors and your faculty members, and maybe even ask them, like, I don't have to wear a mask, but do you want me to wear a mask? Because some of them have, high-risk people within their families, stay in their homes. They may have younger kids that are 5 and under that aren't vaccinated yet. There's a lot of reasons why people can have legitimate concerns about this change. And it happened pretty quick. The announcement to when it was deployed was fast, and that hasn't given instructors and faculty members a lot of time to think about, how do I want to do this? Do I want to straight change my modality, or am I just going to plow forward? So inviting our students to have a little bit of empathy as they get to enjoy some great freedom that, arguably some of the data says it probably is the right time to do this, but here we are.
And Brandon, I want to appreciate your empathetic approach to your students. How many of you have asked your students, kind of what you want your classes to do? Yeah, Noah has. He's been in my classes. I think one of the things that I'm not second guessing decisions, but I will say that we have a dearth of survey data on what students and instructors want in terms of masks at K-State. People just weren't asked. There is a very vocal group on the pro and the con side that have made their kind of opinions known, but I know that, for instance, until we surveyed our students, and Noah, maybe you can give an overview of what we did in that in just a second. Until we surveyed our students, I really had no idea what the students in my classes wanted when the mask mandate lifted. I will say that to give a little bit of context, I teach my classes high flex. So what that means is my students can choose to come to class in person. I will be there in person, or they can choose to attend via Zoom. If for some reason they can't be there in real time, we also record those classes for later viewing asynchronously. So in my classes, if you don't feel safe, and I've told my students this the whole time, if you don't feel safe, then don't come in person. But I also want them to let me know what would make them feel safe when they kind of come in. So Noah, do you want to kind of give an overview of what our survey strategy was and what we found?
Yeah, absolutely. So we teach two classes together, one advanced social psychology, which is an undergraduate course in the psych department, and then two principles of college teaching class, which is all graduate students. I'm in a much smaller class, about 8 students. And we asked 3 questions on a Likert type scale, so between 1 and 9. I would prefer that Dawn and Noah wear masks in class if I attend in person. I will continue to wear a mask if I attend class in person, and I would be more likely to come to class in person if Dawn and Noah wear masks. So we gave them that option on that kind of that sliding scale to provide the responses then. And then we just asked them to pick one of the following. I prefer that they continue to wear masks. I prefer that they stop wearing masks, or I do not care if Dawn and Noah wear masks. We really found that majority of our students did not care. They didn't. They were comfortable with us doing either or. And so this morning in advanced social psychology, we did not wear masks, and that's primarily a lecture class. So that's just a lot of Dawn, facilitating just him giving a lecture, where our principles of college teaching class is a lot more of discussion based, where other people might be using their voices a little bit more. And so we were still, I think, going to make a decision on that soon. But I think that the students appreciated having the opportunity to voice their concerns or opinions through the survey, and I'm glad we did that.
And just to be absolutely clear, when Noah said they didn't care, they completed the survey and indicated the box that they didn't care if we wore it. So it's not that they showed they didn't care by not doing it. They actually answered the items and indicated that they weren't as concerned. We did find, and this is part of the reason that I decided not to mask in that first class. Number one, I've had all 3 shots and I've also had COVID. I'm about as safe as I'm going to be. So I let my students know last week that if this were coming up, it wasn't my safety that I was concerned about. It was their safety. And I wanted to make sure that they understood that. I also told them today, while the class data suggests that me not wearing a mask is okay, if anyone wanted me to put a mask on, I had one with me and we'd be happy to do that. So I do want my students to feel safe. And I told them, if you want to reach out after the fact confidentially, let me know, because I don't want anyone saying I don't feel safe coming to this class. The other class, they also ironically said every single student checked the I don't care if you wear a mask, but their own answers about their own mask usage were higher. So in that class, it seemed like there was a little bit more of a sentiment that, yeah, we feel a little bit safer with masks. And for that reason, I think that Noah and I are going to continue to mask in that class. I think one of the things that I'm trying to do, and I think Brandon was trying to do this as well, is I'm trying to use this as another way to show my students that I care about them and their experiences. And that, it's not political, it's about what makes them feel safe, and kind of letting them know that I don't want this to be an interruption to their learning experience. But I will say that it felt weird. It felt naked when I take off a mask and talk to a group of people this morning, because I haven't done that in literally 2 years. So I don't know. I think a lot of us are just kind of, figuring out as we go along. And this morning was weird for me. So I wondered if anyone else had similar experience, similar thoughts, doubts, answers. I'd love answers about this situation.
So I will go. So I taught right after Dawn and Noah this morning, and I surveyed students kind of like in class. I did it as like anonymously as I could. They like passed them the back of the room, so I couldn't see like what they were writing. And I told them to just give me your feelings. Like this is as like typical like psychologist as I will ever get. Like, just tell me what you are thinking. Like, if you feel safe, if you're concerned for me or you or other people, like just where you were and like how we were all feeling. And my responses were basically in line with kind of what Noah had said. They really they were excited to not have to wear them themselves, but they didn't care if I kept wearing them or if their peers did. Like they didn't have like a bias basically about like people who wanted to wear them, and they understood that people have different circumstances. There were several students who said, like, if you want me to wear a mask, like I'd be willing to do that. So they were really also empathetic of their other classmates, which was really nice to see. And they were really empathetic like towards me as well, saying that like if I felt more comfortable wearing it, they wouldn't think any differently of me. So it was really nice to just get like, basically they wrote like paragraph responses for me, which is way more than I was expecting. But it was nice to see basically just how they were feeling and where they were at basically. But it was refreshing to see how empathetic and understanding they were. So I did mask this morning, but I don't know what I'm going to do Friday. I haven't made my mind up if I'm going to try the naked approach, or if I'm going to continue to mask or not. I'm not sure. So yeah, but it was good to hear from them though. I appreciated it. So yeah.
So Taylor, one of the things that Noah and I noted is my students actually discussed a lot more this morning than they had in previous classes. It was really almost like, you know, their voices were now kind of unleashed. Did you have like a similar experience in your class?
So generally my class is pretty good, but I did have different students also participating. So I had that like same group of students that always talks, but then I did have a couple additional students that potentially just felt less restricted, I guess. But yeah, I did have a little bit of that as well. Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. How about the rest of y'all? What are you thinking? And by the way, if you haven't been to a chat before, I can talk for however long this thing goes. So you don't, I'll find things to talk about. But I do want to make sure that y'all have the opportunity to share your questions, your experiences, etc.
So, oh wait, sorry, that's the wrong screen. I have a lot of them. So I teach tomorrow. So I was thinking what I was gonna tell the students, and I wanted to kind of run it by you all and seeing, you know, if you think that's what I should say or do, or any, you know, but I was pretty much, you know, I was gonna actually tell them what the CDC guidelines were, was to say, and then I was just gonna tell them I'll keep wearing a mask as long as at least one person wears it, because I don't know if somebody has a pre-existing condition or they have somebody at home. And as long as they know, and I don't want to say this, but I just don't want, I don't want you to feel like you're the only one wearing it, you know, and not wear it for that reason. So that's kind of the basic approach I was going to take. So I don't know if anybody has any ideas what else I should mention or any feedback or anything like that.
So Slava, I like that idea of giving an opportunity for that one person who's maybe in social psych terms, nonconformist. You're now kind of allowing them that ally in that situation. One of the things we know from that research is even having one ally in nonconformity allows for more nonconformity. And I'm not saying anything valenced about wearing masks. I'm just putting into social psych terminology in terms of more frequent versus less frequent behavior. I do think it's kind of interesting that, you know, part of my reason to not wear my mask, I came in with my mask on. Noah came in with his mask on. None of our students had masks. So if we were kind of working with your decision, Slava, then we were kind of consistent with what you were doing. But I came in with that mask to let them know that masks are okay. And then I came in and did that. So I like your approach. The only thing I do get a little bit concerned about, and I think, you know, Sarah's kind of mentioning this a little bit in the chat as well, is there the possibility then, though, if only one student is wearing it and you're wearing it, am I like, as another student in that class saying, this guy would take his mask off and I could hear him better if you just took yours off? So that's my only kind of concern about the social pressure going on there. I wonder if people had thoughts about that.
It's an interesting question, because although I'm not anti-mask, I feel like the masks have provided a protection, and I've shown up and taught in person for as much as I can over the last 2 years, knowing that the masks should, if everyone's wearing masks, I'm wearing a mask, we should be safe. yeah, I wonder if there are students who feel the same way. They're like, they know they can come in person because people have been wearing masks. And although they're concerned about sickness, they've trusted the science in order to show up. And now that has been taken away. And yeah, I'm wondering if part of the discussion would be, as part of kind of teaching empathy to students, be like, hey, if you see someone in one of your classes who's wearing a mask, can you interpret that not as they're mad at you, but they've got legitimate reason, and maybe you can ask them like, hey, if we're going to be in a group and we're going to discuss, do you want me to wear a mask for the time that I'm here in class talking to you? And to hopefully be more opt-in, realizing that someone's wearing a mask, it's not because they're mad at everyone else. They've got a legitimate reason why they're wearing it, and maybe you can be empathetic by putting yours on for the few moments you're going to be interacting with them. But that may be a tough sell. I don't know.
So Brandon, as you said, I'm embarrassed to say that I just talked for 50 minutes about empathy in my class this morning and never once related it to mask wearing. Just didn't even think to do that. I'll blame Noah because he didn't cue me to do that. But it's one of those things where I think that's an excellent point to make with your students. Another way to build community with them. One of the things about the mandate and the optional masking now that I think we all have to be aware of is that you can't tell someone to put a mask on, even if they come to your office. But you can ask. You can't compel them to say yes. But what I'm really hoping is that if you're in a situation where you or someone else got a pre-existing condition, whatever, and you say, hey, while we talk, can you put a mask on? I would like to think that we would respect those other people's needs empathetically in doing so. I like that you took that on as a specific approach. And like I said, I'm kind of embarrassed that didn't occur to me to do this morning. But yeah, that's a great point, Brandon. As Trinda says in the chat, hoping this experience has given people a better understanding of individual needs. It's funny. I think this entire pandemic experience could do that. It could also do the other and just make things kind of contentious when we disagree. So the optimistic side, I really do hope we're starting to understand that people have different levels of comfort, different situations they're dealing with, different challenges. And I know that empathy is something that I've definitely tried to infuse more in my teaching as a result of the pandemic. And it's been a bigger point in the classes that I teach as a result. But I could see it going the other way too. I mean, as I walk into Bluemont this morning, I'm looking at those stickers on the door that say, stop forced masking or whatever it said. I mean, it's pretty clear that some people are not willing to empathize with another viewpoint. And there are people on both sides of that. I'm not trying to single out one. I'm just reminded of the stickers I saw this morning. So it's tough right now. Now, I will say, I felt happier than I expected to teaching without the mask this morning. I will say that I've been probably more on the reluctant end of stopping mask mandates and those kinds of things. I still wear masks when I go to the supermarket and those kind of things. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed teaching without the mask this morning. It was almost a different experience. So, LB, look, I was just going to say something right there.
You read my face too well. I'm probably the dissenting person in the club. I intend to wear my mask the way I've been wearing it all along. I put it on when I get in my car, and I don't take it off until I get back in my garage in my car. Now, why? Not because of COVID, but because I also have a pretty good sinus issue, and it helps. It helps. I'm finding there's benefits for me personally to ward off anything that comes through my nostrils.
Sure.
And I don't particularly like spraying them. So the option is wearing a mask.
Now, LB, to put in context, one of the things we did talk about earlier, I saw you logged a little bit late, is I surveyed my students, and one of my classes I'm going to continue to wear a mask in. So it's not that I'm saying, I'm throwing away all my masks or something like that. I'm trying to kind of make the situation specific decision. But I absolutely agree with you and with Brandon, who said, the masks are doing something, right? Like last year, I didn't get sick. Normally there's a couple times a year where I get sick and I'm laid out. Last year I didn't get sick. That was amazing. So the masks are doing something. I'm just saying that this morning, very uncomfortably, when I took off that mask and taught, it was just a different experience.
And I think when you're in a studio for 3 hours, it matters as opposed to being in a
Yeah.
class for 2 minutes. That's the other part of that, is that I'm teaching a studio and I don't know where these students have been overnight. I know that they're stressing, they have a project due today. And so, yes, I'm going to use judgment about that, even with distance. But when I'm reviewing work at the desk, I'm closer than 6 feet. I
Sure.
have to be. So, in that sense, I'm protecting me.
Right.
I don't care whether they have a mask on or not. I want them to know why I'm wearing a mask. And that as long as they're comfortable with me wearing my mask, they can take theirs off.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to impose my point of view on anyone.
Right.
And it's
And I think that the optional goes both ways, right? You get to decide to wear one, or you get to decide not to wear one. It's not a compulsion to take those masks off. So for those of us who want to continue to wear them in whatever situations, that's completely awesome. And I'm excited in my classes that this is happening a couple of months in, because I think my students get me a little bit more now than they might have if we were doing this in the first week. So the conversation, when I asked them for their feedback, we did so anonymously, but when I asked them for the feedback, I think they told me honestly what they feel. So I think it's kind of a good point for this to happen. I, like many of you, like the world opening up during spring, but my allergies are going to start to kill me in a little bit, and I get that too. But it's such a weird and complicated thing. I'll also point out, and I said this earlier, but just to make sure everyone's kind of contextual as it came later, is I teach my classes high flex, so you never have to come face to face if you don't want to. So if you want to watch over Zoom, you'll have that opportunity, because I don't want anyone, no matter what the mask situation is, to feel unsafe in my class.
I also think that for my students, and especially for me right now, I don't have to feel uncomfortable telling a student to put the mask on, which saves me a lot of conversation that I don't like, but rather to leave that to their choice when and a lot of my students will then say, oh, I'm eating or I'm drinking, and I'm going, no, you're not. No, you're not. So this way we don't even have to get into that now, and we'll see where this goes. But I think the empathy comes from how we as faculty deal with each individual student in our room, in terms of whether we require it or we say, your choice.
Now, to be clear, we can't require that now.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
So it's just, so I'm just saying that because when this came down, I was in conversations about the guidance that would be given. It turns out really not much guidance was given, but really there's no opportunity to require it. So if a student comes to your office, for instance, you can ask the student to put on a mask. If the student doesn't want to put on a mask, you still have to meet with that student. Like if it's your student hours or something like that, you can elect to do that in another part of the building in a more open space or something along those lines. But we can't require masks in any situation that I'm aware of at K-State outside of the transportation. Like if you're on the AutoBus or something, you can do that. But it's my understanding that if it's a K-State in a public space, and our offices are considered public spaces, you can't require masks.
Oh, and I think the other piece of this is we've had some good weather, so why not be outside? It's just cool.
Absolutely an option, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a way to sit, in the plaza or wherever you're closest to an outdoor space, outdoor classroom. It also changes up the venue, which I think gives the students a breath of fresh air in more than one way. So they enjoy moving to different spaces on campus and exploring. And this is right now for this week and maybe part of next week before break, because we know at break they're going to be wherever they're going to be.
Right.
This is a great opportunity to get out of the building.
So this is a different question, but you made me think of this. And this is something I've thought about for a while. Is how many of you have had walking meetings? All right, a few of you have. I've had a couple. I find not having access to my computer and its files becomes a rate limiting factor a little bit. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how do y'all deal with those kinds of things?
Before we jump into that, Don,
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
Fine. when we're communicating this and we're going to see this message communicated to different faculty like you just described, I think it will be helpful if instead of framing in terms of what we can't do as faculty, also emphasizing that if you don't want to be meeting with the student face-to-face, you can require that your office hours are done over Zoom. So there's still an option that is available for people that don't, because the way you framed it right there, I know some people could get really anxious feeling like now they're being forced, they don't have any option.
Now,
there still is an option to them.
My understanding though is that if you're going to do that, you have to do all of your meetings, all of your student hours meetings online. You can't provide different access to yourself because that's considered discriminatory. So you can't say, if you're willing to put on a mask, I'll meet with you face to face, but if you won't, I'll have to meet with you over Zoom. My understanding is you can put it all on Zoom, but you can't be selective like that. That's the guidance that I was given.
And if that's the case, that's fine. It's still an option that
Right.
that faculty will have to be
Right.
able to avoid them.
And as Brandon mentioned a little bit earlier, if as an instructor you were not comfortable teaching in your classroom with students without masks, you can request that temporary, what was it called? The temporary modality switch or whatever it was. You can request that because you are afraid of contracting COVID. That is allowable in most colleges for that shift to online instruction. Now that might not work for you. That might not be something your college allows, but I know that arts and sciences, for instance, would allow that. So back to my other question, how do y'all handle walking meetings when you're away from your computer? That's the biggest thing that I have. So like when Noah and I or Slava and I are talking about a manuscript draft, it's hard to do that while strolling. I love the idea of being outside. I love the idea of walking. So I'm kind of looking for some advice on how to make these work.
Well, you have to have the right content for the walking meeting. Like if it's where you're like brainstorming or class planning or idea generating, that's perfect for a walking meeting because that way you don't get sucked into your computer and start looking stuff up and lose your focus. But if you're trying to edit a paper, don't do that in a walking meeting unless somebody's reading it out loud. I don't know. But yeah, I like it best if I'm just trying to brainstorm, work through some ideas with somebody because I get so sucked into, well, let me just look that up. You know, I'm a librarian. I can't not look it up unless I don't have a computer in front of me.
I think the other thing, and I've seen this well before COVID, when I had a walking partner, that it depends on what the content is and who's delivering it. Because if this is a meeting where you're not talking a lot and you're listening, it's very easy to do. If it's something where you're producing something, it may be difficult, but you can always record it. So it depends on what kind of meeting you're having. I wouldn't say if I were in faculty senate that I could sit and listen. But you know what I'm saying. If it's not my meeting and I'm there as a listener to gain information, that's one thing. But if I'm having to report or in some way engage in that meeting where there's a reference, that might be more difficult to do.
Okay. And I saw a couple other hands. Anyone else have some advice to make these work or when these would work well? All right, so I'm gonna shift the topic to another topic. We got spring break coming up. I usually convey to my students that I need a break too. I kind of let them know that, you know, that human side of me, that I'm getting a little run down, that while I love teaching them and I love the content, having some time to refresh a little bit is good for me. What did all the rest of you kind of feel about that, about kind of sharing our own fatigue, while at the same time kind of letting them know, you know, that balance? I'm tired, but I still want to teach you. So I'm kind of wondering how you kind of ride that balance.
Okay, I for break, whenever I can, I'm in Washington, D.C. I have the luxury of having a home there and I'm renovating that home. So it makes it easy for me to get on a plane and leave. Now I take my laptop with me usually because I never know when my department head who's working might have things that I need to respond to or so forth. But I use the summer a lot of my summertime as well as my breaks, Christmas, Thanksgiving, to indulge myself in a different kind of manual labor work that's different from mental labor that I do. Now, in the best intentions, I do take grading with me, but I never get it done. So that's my intent, but it never happens. So I'm learning now, don't even carry the extra weight, just leave it here. And I usually come back on Saturday. So Sunday I can sort of get my head back into school, but that gives me, my home there gives me an escape, which some people just don't have.
Okay, I love that idea of the escape. So you get the psychological and the physical escape from here. I like that. So what do the rest of you do in terms of, like I said, kind of contextualizing our own fatigue, our own emotional needs to our students? Because our students often think we don't have feelings, we don't get fatigued, we're like the brilliant robots in front of class who don't get worn down. And I like letting them, behind that curtain a little bit, but I also don't want them to kind of lose faith in my credibility as an instructor for them. So I was kind of wondering what other people kind of do and say to their students.
Well, I want to say one other thing very quickly, because you added say to your students.
Sure.
So one of the things that I do before we all leave is I go around the room and ask people what are they going to be doing. And I enjoy where they're going. I respond to that. We have a conversation. Oh, you're going with friends, your family. We really embrace what they're doing. And then if they don't ask me, which a lot of times they do, but if they don't, then I tell them what I'm going to be doing. Then when we come back, before we get started back into school again, I ask again, how was your break? What did you do? Did anybody do any work for my class? And we have, 15-minute conversation about that as well. So I'm embracing and enjoying what they did. And I let them know I appreciate that. And I'll even verify and say, yeah, I'm glad you didn't do any work. We tried to keep you from doing work, but if you did, I applaud those who tell me they worked on their model or they did such and such. And I also say, well, did you take a break? I encourage that. So I totally embrace where they're at.
I love that. That's awesome. I love that you do it before and after. So you have that kind of come back and then it continues the conversation. It's a nice intro to break and kind of outro from break. So I like that. Very nice. What else?
So I'm Katie, a little late to the party, I apologize, even though my name says Tiffany. And I would say that I don't teach students, but I'm in corporate. And what I've learned, especially over COVID and for myself, is that you have to give yourself permission to take a break, but then I also have to let others know that I am taking a break. So for instance, leaving out of the country here in about a month, and at the bottom of my email starting today, it says, I will be out of the country, right, on April 1st through the middle of April. If you need something, please have it into me or a request by March 25th, right? So I'm also giving people the permission, right, I feel like, to say, hey, she's leaving, so I need to get myself organized, because I need to give myself a permission, but then I also need to let others know that, hey, I'm not going to be here, and it's okay. Because I feel like sometimes, especially the younger folks I work with, are like, oh, I can never take a break. Yeah, you can. You have to. We all get to that point where you have to refresh to be good for yourself, but for your team. So I guess I'm in the area of giving permission, and I'm not going to apologize for not working, right? When I'm on vacation, I'm creating memories, or I'm just reflecting, or I just simply need a break, is kind of my attitude.
I love that you have the very specific boundary for yourself too. If you want this, it's got to be in by hand. I'll be gone for these times. That's great. You're not only giving others permission, but you're modeling it yourself. That's awesome. I love that. And by the way, I'm glad you introduced yourself. One of our regulars is named Tiffany, and I thought it was that Tiffany. So now I know it's not. So I didn't cold call on the wrong Tiffany. So thank you.
I apologize about that. It's a Bible study confusion.
Not a problem at all. It's all good.
Don, the other thing is that I don't think you just do this at breaks. I let my students know during the year that I have other work to do, not as an excuse for not getting my grading done or not doing it when I said I would, but to let them know what the life of a faculty member is without it being an excuse, so that they can see I'm busy with other things other than them at times. And at other times, they can value that I showed up on a weekend or in the evening and say, wow, she took that time out for me. And that helps them understand that faculty have other lives other than family or other things that we do as faculty, whether it's a meeting during class that we have to attend, or the fact that we have research projects or papers that we're trying to get out as well, so that they appreciate us. And I found my students ask me questions about it. They'll say, did you get that paper done you were working on last weekend? You know, it gives them the humanness of who we are. And I think they just think we're big robots sometimes that have no feelings and really just work, work, work. And they, even though we do work a lot, they need to also see that as well.
I also think I love what you're saying, Albie, because a lot of times they think, well, you only teach 2 classes. That's only 6 hours a week. The rest of the time, are you playing video games in the office? You know, those kind of things. Like, I think they don't really understand all the layers, you know, of what it is that we do. I did an interview with a student yesterday. She's in the TRIO program. She interviewed, 3 different faculty members for what they were doing. And she was like, tell me what you do at K-State. And I was like, I have 3 fullish time jobs. He's like, what? Kind of thing. And just telling her what all goes into that. She's like, how do you get that all done? I was like, I don't know. And I don't, that's the easy answer. But it's letting them know these things they do, because I know that when I became an assistant professor, I was surprised at all the stuff that wasn't teaching and research that went into this job. I'm surprised some days when I look back at my day and see how little of my day was actually devoted to teaching and research. So it's sometimes very interesting. And I think if we let our students know this, it's maybe a little bit more of a revealing perspective on what it is that we do, but also kind of appreciates that while what we do with them is not the only thing we do, it's a very important thing, that we do. And you kind of said, I carve out my time to do this. It's important to me for this. And I let my students know, for instance, the assignments that we give to you, we know they're coming back. So we're going to make them worthwhile, because I have a lot of other things that I can be doing other than reading your assignments. So I'm going to make sure I want to read the assignments that you all do. That's why they're constructed in this way. So I like that. And I mentioned, we both kind of agreed, we're not emotionless robots. We are people, and bringing that humanity into the classroom, I think, is important. You've all heard me talk about peace before: the preparation, expertise, the authenticity, caring, and engagement. That authenticity piece is something that students say they want more of. They want to see us more as people. They want to know who we are, not just, we're a content matter expert on this. They want to know that we're a person. Today at the end of our class, like I said, we talked about empathy. At the end, we just kind of talked about, are people good? Kind of that overarching philosophical question: is empathy even possible? And it was amazing. Students were like, no, we want to know what you think as a person. We know what you think professional. What do you think as a person? And it's funny. I'm going to put that off for a minute. It's like, no, we're going to get to that. And they wouldn't let me off the hook. They wanted to do my own personal opinions on that too. And it was really kind of cool to kind of have that shared moment.
I think the other thing that I'm learning this year in particular is, because I've got a couple of grants going and a bunch of stuff going more than usual. And I'm happy about that. But I also recognize I have to take time to celebrate myself, to celebrate what I did that week that looked impossible to get accomplished, or just to celebrate that I got through the day. I mean, find something, and it doesn't have to be cake and punch or a drink, so to speak. Whatever it is that you need to celebrate the moment, even if it's 1 minute. I jump up and down, and just like go crazy. But you need something that gives you that good feeling about having accomplished. And I'm learning now to take more of those celebratory moments.
I love that. I saw Hayden had mentioned in the chat too, that the self-care and the kind of talking about this should happen constantly, right? It's not just for breaks, and LB had said this as well, but even the weekend, this is what I'm gonna do this weekend to recharge myself and take care of myself. I think it's really important that we model that. If we show them that we're people who work hundreds of hours a week, they may never feel up to that. That could actually exacerbate their imposter phenomenon. And we might scare people away from a field that they could do very well in. So I really love that aspect. LB, I also really love your idea of kind of these celebrations. So what I'm gonna ask when you do the waterfall chat, I do this in my classes, everybody writes something in the chat, but everyone hits return at the same time. And we do this in my lab meetings, we do this in some of the class I teach is, what was a win this week? And it could be, it doesn't have to be like this week, it could be last week too. A recent win for you. What's something that you just really took some pride? It could be personal, be professional, whatever. But what's a win? So you can write that in about 20 seconds, I'll say go, and we'll see what everyone does. All right, everybody hit enter. So I'll say my win is I wrote some teaching pieces this past week, got some great support on those. One of the great support I got is actually, I'd run a piece about how we shouldn't give exams in class anymore, maybe. And some people lit me up. And actually one person in the Zoom meeting defended me, and that really meant a lot to me. And thank you so much for that. That was awesome. Because you can't really defend yourself, then you get in the comment war. But that was really cool. I appreciated that. LB got an institute application submitted last night. Nice. That is awesome. Sarah mentioned realizing that working out with the trainer is doing what I wanted it to do. That is amazing. Taylor's cat let him sleep in past 6:45 yesterday. That is amazing because cats have no chill. So that is awesome. Mary successfully presented research at a conference last week in Albuquerque, which is really cool, and had some fun there. Trinum working on an accessibility project and finished after many long hours. There's nothing better than getting a project done. That is often Trina. Noah's excited about his thesis proposal idea. Noah has such an awesome thesis proposal idea. It's going to be published like the minute he's done with it. It's amazing. Hayden sharing an awesome meal with friends last night. Slava last week got back to consistently working out. For those of you who never met Slava, every now and then he lets you know he works out and tries some martial arts classes. Slava's in my lab, so I can make fun of him. We're also going to spar in like 7 years, I think he said. So when he learns enough and I get old enough, that's when we'll spar.
Yes, I'm ready for it.
With a client. What's that, Slava?
No, I'm ready for it. I just gotta catch you I gotta be at my height to catch you on the downward slope.
Right. Brandon's been working with a client who'd lost a valuable business relationship about a year ago and trying to rekindle that relationship with a long-term strategy. She met with a new stakeholder yesterday and was able to rekindle. That is awesome when we're able to redo those things. Tiffany, or Katie, I think said, sharing and caring. And Francisca finally submitted an application for a summer job. That is amazing. I find that sharing wins is a really good, it's an uplift. I think Taylor would say this is a way to upgauge the students. Taylor and one of Taylor's colleagues, Trevor Bell, are actually going to be presenting at the Midwestern Psychological Association this way of upgauging your students. It's kind of a combination of uplifting and engaging your students. Really, really cool thing. But this is a really cool way to upgauge the people in your class and yourself, because I think sometimes, and even some of these chats, and I'm guilty of this because I lead the chats, right? We commiserate, we complain about stuff, but I think every now and just celebrating those cool things is really just a great way to feel good. So in LB, when you talk about self-care and talk about celebrating stuff, that's amazing, and it's something that we should do intentionally. Don't make it an accident. Plan to do it, and like Hayden said, like you said, like a couple others said, do it chronically, do it consistently. Now, I do want to let people know we're going to end at 12:50 today. So we got about 5 minutes left. So I want to use the rest of the time for anything that people want to talk about, share, ask about that we haven't already had the opportunity to do.
I have one. Only because I'm on this right now. How many people that I'm looking at on Zoom are engaged scholars. I have a motive for this. How many of you are engaged scholars? So I'll tell you why I'm asking this. I'm chairing the Faculty Senate proposal to put, for lack of a better way of describing it, a definition that our university will use for community engagement and outreach, service learning, all of those things as part of our TMP. Yes, as quickly as we could get it through Faculty Senate. So I'm kind of on a mission to find out how many of you actually do community engagement and would respond to that, how you'd respond to that. Do you think it's important? How are you feeling? I'm trying to get a good sense from as many of our colleges, not just those I'm working with in subcommittee to make this happen.
I just want to chime in from my perspective in the libraries. We are tenured faculty. A lot of our jobs is service related. So we don't have the research opportunities all the time that everybody else has. And this would make it, I'm trying to get more of my faculty into the full professor status. But because they've invested so much time and engagement and in the community, they're like, I don't hit that mark over in this area. And I'm like, but you're doing so much. So this, I think, would be huge in a lot of disciplines on campus.
Yeah, good point, Sarah. I think what I don't want is a definition that doesn't fit all. I think that we in disciplines have very specific definitions for what our brand of engagement is. And I don't want to leave anyone out on our campus. That is something I want to be sure that happens. And that's why I'm asking this group, because you are a very diverse group of individuals who can help us with defining the word. Because we don't want to make the mistake when it comes up in the fall in Faculty Senate. We want to be sure it's embracing the various ways that we interpret engaged scholarship. So if you have, I'll leave you with this. If you have a definition or you have an opinion, please send it to me. I need it. So that's my commercial.
And I appreciate that. And please follow up with LB as you have ideas. Pass along that to other colleagues who may have ideas. I will say that, arts and science isn't necessarily the college I think of in terms of, engaged scholarship. A lot of our stuff is, as a social psychologist, I do a lot of stuff for social psychologists. I don't do as much community engagement kinds of things, but definitely share this around. There are a couple of messages in the chat I'll kind of point you out to. And like I said, I'll have to leave in a couple of minutes. If people want to stay on and use the Zoom space to talk more, that's great. Someone had asked about advice for a GTA who is struggling to practice self-care, not getting swamped with all the other stuff. One of the things that I've always tried to do is schedule in my self-care. So I schedule in my workouts, I schedule in my downtime. I also schedule in my time to do the work that I do. I'm not awesome about keeping that schedule sometimes, but that's one of the things that I do. If people have some other ideas, maybe they could drop those in the chat as well, so people can kind of pick up on those. And the last idea, or maybe the last idea that I see is from Brandon kind of asking about, how do you correctly calibrate average GPAs in a class? How do you make a class harder while you really want every student to succeed? So again, like I said, I'll have to leave in a second, so I'll give a quick thought. My thought on this is that the effort and the product isn't necessarily all they need to be related to the grade. So what we can do is we can provide feedback, we can have lower stakes things, we can have scaffolding assignments that take a lot of effort, but there's not a ton of points to kind of put in there. There's even something called specifications grading. I don't know if any of you have heard of specifications grading before, but basically if you do it, you get the points. And there are different thresholds you have to reach to do that. So it's pretty clear. And then after that, you can give feedback on however you want to do that. So I think kind of what I would recommend just generally is having maybe a bit of a disconnect between the most difficult things and the high stakes assignments. So you can kind of nurture them toward those things. You focus on the quality over here, but you maybe make it a little bit lower stakes. And I realize this isn't the clearest thing I've ever said in my life. But it basically means they have the opportunity to play and innovate, without a lot of penalty while they're still learning to do that. So that's, and we can definitely talk about this more moving forward. And if other people have ideas for that, they can drop in there too. But as I said, I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna leave my colleagues to redo the announcements. Hayden, you good with the announcements? I'm sorry, I have to take my daughter to a doctor's appointment. That's why I've got to sign off. But I will see you all next week. Colby Moorberg and Brian Lynch will be talking to us about open education resources. Then I'm signing off, but feel free to sign on. It's good to see you all.
I know.
Thanks so much, Don. Yeah, as he just said, we have a really exciting session next week at this time with Brian Linshield and Colby Moorberg talking about open pedagogy. I think that'll be a really great session, so you won't want to miss. And then I think earlier Noah dropped the link in the chat to information about the PD and fellowship information, PD certificate and fellowship information with TLC. So thank you, Noah. And then, yeah, stay tuned for a call for proposals for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning Showcase event that we are planning for May during finals week. That'll be due at the end of the day on Monday, April 11th, and we will have a Qualtrics link to share with you very soon. And so any other points of note from my TLC colleagues? Okay, I think we're good. Thanks everybody for coming today. The discussion was great as always, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.